Pinterest structurally is a lot like most of the social networks that you use, like Facebook and Twitter and everything else. You've got your profile and pins. This is my collection of pins here with my profile header underneath it. Then I got my boards, which if you use Facebook, anything like that, that would be similar to the structure for like your photo albums. And then this is my news feed, which if you're on Twitter, you got your news feed, or Facebook, you've got your news stream there. Well, of course, since Pinterest is graphic, your stream is nothing but a series of pictures here. But the basic structure is basically the same comparing across those. The physical structure, however, once you get past that, it gets really different. Okay.
Nancy, before we get past that, can I just say a couple things? Firstly, like if we want to follow you, how do we find you?
I am on, my profile is Nancy Nally. I have a personal profile that's under my name. So it's Nancy Nally, so it's pinterest.com/Nancy Nally.
So I didn't know you could follow other people on Pinterest.
Yep, That's,
You can look at what they've been pinning.
yes, and that's the whole social aspect of it. And
So do I have to be accepted by you?
No, and Pinterest is completely public. And that's actually one of the things that we'll get to in a second here when we talk about some of the differences between some of these other social networks, is how public it is and how kind of at arm's length it is compared to a lot of the other networks. That's one of the kind of major differences that you're looking at. But Twitter and Facebook, this is one of the key differences. It's existential. And what I mean is when you're posting, you're talking about what is right now, usually. You're talking about what I am. I am something today. I'm sick, or I'm doing something. Where you are, saying I'm at office divvy. It's all about right now, how I am. I'm sick, I'm happy, I'm sad, whatever. Who I am with. You're saying, I'm out to dinner with my husband or whatever. So it's all about the right now and your current state of being when you're on like Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, any of this stuff. The big difference between those and Pinterest is that Pinterest is aspirational. Almost all the content that you're going to see on Pinterest is people thinking future, where they want to be. So instead of what I am, you get what I want to be. I want to be thin. I want to be prettier. I want to, develop my career. I want to, it's all about where they're going instead of where they are. Where I want to be instead of where I am right now, out to dinner with my husband, you get travel. Travel is a huge category on Pinterest. And, it's all pictures of gorgeous beaches, or, travel articles about places that they want to go, Disney World pins, huge on Pinterest. It's all about the aspiration, not right now. How I want to be, again, inspiration is a term that was coined on Pinterest that became such an issue that they've actually had to restrict it. This concept of, especially young girls on Pinterest, that were posting pictures that were, super thin young women, and to the point of anorexia. And it became a problem to the point that Pinterest has actually started moderating it and trying to scrub that because it was getting them a really bad reputation. And who I admire, not who I am with now, but who I admire. And that extends kind of broadly to everything from posting quotes from your favorite person, your writers and things like that you admire. Quotes are huge on Pinterest. And people will have folders and folders and folders of them on their boards. And everything from that to posting, pictures of the latest hot guy, will go viral and stuff. So that's, again, but that's very aspirational. It's not about your actual moment-to-moment real life, which is where the more concrete world where you're on Twitter and Facebook talking about. So, who are all these people talking on Pinterest, or not talking, as we're going to discuss in a minute? 80% of Pinterest users are female. They are actually me. They are suburban/rural, 30 to 45 on average, most likely white, and income averaging $50,000 to $75,000 household. What this translates into is they convert purchase-wise at a much higher rate than users on other social networks. Pinterest is relatively small for a social network compared to the other major ones. It's only got like a little less than 70 million users, but they convert at a much higher percentage rate for sales, and when they do convert, they convert at a much higher average ticket, like $140 to $180. So that's a high value audience if that's your target demographic. And so it's something that you have to consider when you're thinking about what to put out there. Like being a chef, obviously this is right in your target range, Carol. Women make all the decisions about household food and party planning and all of that stuff. So that's like right in your sweet spot. Attorneys, when you're looking at that demographic, you have to be a little more creative. And we'll get there in a minute. What Pinterest is not. What do we do when we go on Facebook and Twitter? We talk to everybody. You sit there on Facebook all afternoon and, you send messages back and forth with your friends, and, you post to your friends that, oh, the kid is sick, and then, your friends come back with a flood of messages saying, oh, how much that sucks, right? You converse. Pinterest is not conversational at all, practically. You have, on the other platforms, an expectation that the content that you post is going to be fairly personal, especially if you're using your own name. But because on Pinterest you're curating other people's content, you're not actually posting yourself as a rule, except in rare business situations where you might be posting your own content, like from your own blog or website. You're not on Pinterest posting, hey, here's the latest intimate detail of my personal life. Therefore, it is a step backwards as far as distance from the people that are following you. It's also completely public. So again, that's open forum. It's not as intimately personal. From a marketing standpoint, this gives you the chance to let people feel like they know a little bit about you through the content that you choose to curate, and to let them feel like they're familiar with you a little bit, but without having to really tell them anything about your life. So, like for instance, as an attorney, you need to keep that shield around your personal life somewhat. But you also deal with the aspect of the fact nobody calls an attorney because they want to, for the most part. And that is a challenge of marketing, because the world is full of attorney jokes, right? Mm-hmm. And so to try to develop a warm and fuzzy personality when you have a job like that, or an accountant, or something like that, is difficult. Pinterest gives you kind of a backdoor way to develop a kind of good vibe with people without the law ever having to really be part of it, because you can go on Pinterest under your name and become known as the guy who posts the really good recipes, or the guy who does, or the guy who knows where all the good photography links are, or whatever. And then when it comes time for somebody to have to use your service, a service that they don't normally have a really good, warm, fuzzy feeling about, and they're looking down their list of choices in the phone book, they see your name and you're not just some random attorney to them, you're the guy who knows all the good vegan recipes, and they're like, I call that guy. So it's like without even having to bring what your actual job is into it, you can get capital with people without having to get personal with them.
So in that case, is it important to use first and last name?
If you want to have it under the business, that's fine. But I guess my point is, don't feel like just because you're on there under the business name that you can only post law stuff. Because you can be the law firm that knows where all the good surfing spots are as your way of establishing a rapport with people. You don't have to feel like just because you're doing the, business name that you can only post stuff that's, as long as it's something that you don't mind having associated mentally with the business, you can be the one that posts all the new book reviews, As it's just, it gets a positive thought in people's minds associated with your name so that you're the familiar, positive name when they go, hey, I need that, and they look down a list of suggestions. So what does all of this mean that we've just been discussing for your content? Well, first off, if you haven't realized it already, you actually have two sets of content that you have to kind of think about when you're talking about Pinterest. Do any of you have a website that you manage? Mm-hmm. Is it a static one or is it a blog?
A blog.
A blog, okay. And so when you're talking about content, you actually have two sets of content to think about. You have your blog, and then you have your Pinterest content, which can be two totally separate things. I'm a scrapbook blogger. I somehow got known on Pinterest for posting home decor stuff because that's what I was personally pinning on Pinterest that attracted people's attention, and now I have a whole bunch of people following me for my home decor stuff. So there's those two kind of, one doesn't necessarily have to equal the other when you're thinking about the content. So on your website, what are you thinking about when you're thinking about Pinterest and how it relates to your content? Well, the first thing is, are you actually creating pinnable content on your website? And the answer is sometimes no. There are just certain types of content that pin well and certain types that don't. I'm a scrapbook blogger. Scrapbooking is huge on Pinterest, but most of what I write is news. Nobody wants to pin an article about the latest company that went bankrupt. It's just not Pinterest friendly. Every so often, I try to go in and write articles that are basically Pinterest bait, that are stuff that is the sort of stuff that grabs people's attention. We discussed earlier, it's aspirational. They want things that they can learn from, that they can, that makes their lives better in some way on Pinterest. So like one of the recent Pinterest bait pieces I wrote was 7 household items surprising household items that you can use for scrapbooking. And it was all, like baby wipes and the blue shop towels from the garage and all of that. It went viral on Pinterest, just like I knew it would. That's why I wrote it. And it's the title, you have to structure it, that list title. I created the graphic that's up here, the one in the upper right, that has all 7 items in one graphic, because that's the graphic that people are going to pin, because it encapsulates the whole article in one graphic. That entire article was tailored right for Pinterest. And but once you've created that content, then you have things that you have to think about in the actual construction of your website. Because if you create the content and you don't have the other stuff lined up, you're not going to have effective pins. If you're on WordPress, it's really easy to do pin this buttons. There are plugins that will put a little pin it button in the corner of every single one of your graphics so people can click on them and pin them. There's also built into the actual like structure of the platform places that they will put like in the sidebar so people can pin stuff and everything. Now the hardcore users don't even need those because they all have the pin it button in their actual browser bar where they will go, but you know, the pin it button being there in the graphic is a nice little reminder. Hey, you know, you could pin this to give them a little nudge. So that's something you want to make sure that is implemented in your site.
So what is WordPress?
WordPress is, are you familiar with Blogger? The blogging software that Google does?
Yeah.
It's another version of Blogger.
Oh.
Jeff Carroll, do you have a website today?
I have a website.
You do?
No matter what platform you're running your website on, there is a version of Pin It that you can install on it. I'm just more familiar with the WordPress one because that's what I run on. Image descriptions. When you upload files to your website, there's usually, depending on what software you're running, it'll be called different things, but there's different captions and image title and image description. The default, when you hit pin it with a pin it button, Pinterest grabs the description off that photo and uses it as the default text for the pin that it creates. So you can do a lot of the work for the people that are pinning from your website if when you upload your photos you put really good descriptions in. You can also make sure by putting those descriptions in that the information that you want people to see on Pinterest with that photo is in those descriptions and gets pinned. Because most people are too lazy to edit those descriptions. So if they click and boom, it pops up and it's populated with a description already, 9 times out of 10 they won't change it. So it'll say whatever you want it to say when it gets pinned, if you take the time to edit the description. Now, watermarking is something that comes up, especially in creative industries. And this is something, Carol, that you might be more affected by. If you have a picture, say, of a cake, and it's something like really fancy and decorative, but it's the sort of thing that somebody might want to copy. That's the sort of thing that gets pinned to Pinterest, and then people just use it as inspiration to create their own. That's a situation where you would benefit from watermarking your images so that it basically has a signature on it that says, hey, I'm the person who originally created this. Because in a lot of situations like that, we see it in the scrapbook industry all the time, people like who make cards, for instance, will pin an entire gallery of cards on their Pinterest page. They never click through to the final article. All they want is the picture. And so copyright becomes a really big issue in situations like that because Pinterest supposedly gets around copyright law by saying, well, we're not creating a copy, we're creating a link, and then the photo is just the link. In certain situations, you can get away with that because the photo isn't really the entire content. But there's other situations, like when you have a craft project or something like that, where the photo is kind of the entire content, and so you're creating a copy that there's no reason to go to the link, there's no reason to go to the website.
Is that picture in the lower right, does that have a watermark on it?
Yes, this is my watermark right here that I use sometimes.
And did you design that?
I did. I designed that. That's our company logo. And then you can't really see it in the image, but that's got the
So if
URL.
anybody wants to pin that on their site, then it's gonna have your watermark on it.
Yes. If they want to pin it, or actually the reason that particular image was watermarked was because people were stealing this was an event that I covered, and in the past I'd had issues with people stealing my photos from my articles to write their own articles about the event. So I was like, okay, I'm going to watermark them so people know where they came from. It basically is your own little ad in there that, you know, if you, I just put the little logo with the URL, with the name real small. But some people in my industry especially, they'll put huge logos like right like across here, for instance, that has their name and their URL on it, so that when people see it, like if they're on Pinterest and they're not clicking through to the link, they're still seeing the name and the URL, so they know who the designer is and they know, where it came from.
So your in up there, which is your logo.
Yeah.
That does not have an active hyperlink embedded
No,
in it?
no,
Okay.
it's just a static graphic that was
Okay.
overlaid over the original.
I've seen on Pinterest, there are times they'll send me a note that says the picture was removed because the person didn't have permission to post.
Yes, and that's when somebody has complained to Pinterest about a copyright violation. And you don't see it too often, but because most of the time, people are pleased to do it. But there are occasions when, like I said, the entire content is basically the photo, and when you pin it, you're basically stealing the content. And there are some people who are sensitive about having their stuff pinned.
Well, it could be something else though, right, Nancy? It could be that somebody downloaded it and uploaded it as though it's there.
Exactly. There's that issue as well. Yes. If they had if the content was originally stolen
Right.
before it was pinned, that could be an issue as well. Yeah. But if it was just, there are some people though, even I know I come across this in my industry, who don't like having their content pinned because they feel like once it's on Pinterest, it's out of their control. And because, like I said, there are some people who just don't click through the link. So, because it's not necessary on certain types of content. It's like you've got the picture of the card, you can make the card from the picture, why would I click through the link?
So to click through the link, you double click on
It's single.
the,
I think it's a single. I just do it automatically, I don't even think about it. But yeah, it's like when you're looking at the board, at your big board that's got all your pins on it, it's one click to pull up the pin, and then it's a second click to pull up the actual original link destination. And that's one thing that people are really sensitive about, is to make sure that when you pin something, that you're pinning it from the original destination. Because like sometimes, people will post articles where they'll write like top 10 articles about such and such. And then like each article has like a little picture next to it that was taken from the original article. And then if you pin one of the pictures from that article, even though that picture came originally from the other website, people get really sensitive about that because that image is supposed to be from the other website. So what you're supposed to do is if you want to pin that image, click through on the link, go to the original website that photo was taken from, and then pin that article and pin that image. So there's all sorts of, ethics and everything that's involved in it, but you get the hang of it. The last thing is really complicated, and it's available to people with business accounts, but it involves a lot of hardcore coding on the website. It's called Rich Pins. It's only available to business accounts. Basically, there's 4 different types of them: movies, products, recipes, and articles. And what happens is when you click on the item and say, I want to pin this from a website that has been coded correctly to provide rich pins, it will pop up and populate like a big form that has like a whole bunch of more information in it than a regular pin does. So I've never even seen one in action. I've only seen the example ones. They're so rare right now because you have to like work with Pinterest to like get them to help you make sure your website is coded correctly. It's it's a big, complicated thing, and like I said, I haven't seen anybody actually execute it yet. So what is the difference between a personal account and a business account? I just mentioned the rich pins. That's one thing that's available to you if you're on a business account. The biggest thing is between the two, which isn't actually on this list, is that the personal accounts, the terms of use supposedly bar you from posting anything that's your own content. So I'm on a personal account. I'm technically barred from posting an article that's on one of my own websites. If you're on a business account, they realize, hey, your whole point of being here is to promote yourself, so we'll let you promote your own, we'll let you pin your own content. One of the other things is names. Obviously, if you're a business, you don't have a first and last name. So they changed the name field for the businesses so that you've got just one field and that you can fill out how you want. You also get, of course, because businesses like numbers, don't we? Advanced analytics that you can see like what everybody's looking at and what they're pinning and what of yours they're repinning and all those good statistics. Both accounts are free for now, although they're working really hard to push the business people to the business accounts, which of course always makes me suspicious that how long are the business accounts going to be free? The other things that you can do if you're on a business account is they just started doing what they call promoted pins, which if you use Twitter or Facebook at all, you're familiar with the concept of promoted posts where you can pay basically to get your tweet or Facebook post or whatever into somebody's news stream. They're doing the same thing now. They're doing promoted pins where you can pay to promote your pins in the public news stream, basically. And
Is it only good for a day? You pay $30 or something on Facebook, it's only good for a day?
I'm not sure exactly what the numbers are and the stuff, because it's one of those things where it's like, contact us and we'll talk to you about it. And it's so brand new that like basically there isn't really a lot of info in the press yet. But I've only actually, in my stream, I've only actually even seen a couple of promoted pins yet. What I have seen a lot of is a similar thing that they introduced at about the same time, which is called related pins, which they've started sneaking pins in. Your news stream is supposed to be made up of all the pins that are posted by the people that you have selected to follow. What they've started doing is they've started sneaking what they call related pins, and it says, like right at the bottom, there's this little thing that says related pin at the bottom of it. So you're like, where did that come from? I don't follow that person. Oh, it's a related pin. It looks at the stuff that you've been pinning and that your friends are pinning and stuff, and it says, hey, if she likes that, she might like this, and it puts it in front of you. And so far, I have to admit, their algorithm seems pretty good because I haven't had anything pop up in my stream that I went, what? They thought I'd like that. You know? Yeah. So it seems pretty good. And it hasn't been really in my face, but like I said, I've only seen a couple ones that were promoted pins, although I've seen a lot of the related ones. So, what are you going to do with your Pinterest now that we've looked at all that information? This is a pin right here on the side. This is a single pin. This is where Pinterest gets really social, right here. You see the comment box under the pin that nobody uses. And this says, where has been previously pinned, who pinned it. And then there's this showing other boards that have the same content on it, and then people who pinned this also pinned here. There's a set of boards below that shows other things. This is where it gets social. It's not conversational, but it's shared content is where it gets social. So the first thing you want to do as you're setting up your Pinterest is define what your purpose is for being there in the first place. Am I just trying to make people think I'm warm and fuzzy? Am I just trying to have fun? Am I trying to plan a project? That's how I ended up as the home decor queen on Pinterest, because we were doing a bunch of home projects and I was using it to organize all my stuff that I was looking at Lowe's and Home Depot. Once you know exactly what your purpose is, then you can figure out, okay, well, what boards do I need for that? And board organization is actually surprisingly important because it gives you a structure to follow when deciding what to pin, and it also gives, they're searchable by topic and tags. So you want to make sure you name them. Stuff I love isn't going to show up in a lot of searches. But if you name it, scrapbook stuff I love, oh, wait a minute, you just put a keyword in it. So it's going to show up. A generic board like recipes is not going to, is going to get buried. But if you start with, vegan recipes for dessert or whatever, vegan dessert recipes, well, keyword, 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 suddenly you're search friendly. So you want to set up that structure. And you don't want to make if you think you're going to be using it a lot, you don't want to make your boards too broad, because then they become huge. So you want to divide, you want to make sure you subdivide them. Like I have a cards board. Well, now I have a Christmas cards board too, because it was like, oh no, can't dump all of that. You got to start dividing. And like my house boards that I did, I have a board for every room in my house, because you just can't. There's just too much stuff. I can't dump it all into the same. I can't say, well, this is stuff for the house and dump it in the same board. It's too much. Your followers are surprisingly important, because 80% of pins on Pinterest are repins that somebody else started, and then somebody else said, hey, I like that. I'm going to repin it on my own. If they're repinning your stuff because 80% of what they pin is repins, and they're like, hey, I like her stuff, pin, 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 you're golden. So who follows you is just as important as how many followers you have.
Now see, I looked at it differently. When I first started Pinterest, I thought of it as it's kind of a hoarder site. And I wanted to keep my boards fewer in number so that I could control them more.
Mm-hmm.
So, when I see 35 boards, I won't even look past the ones that, I have an interest in. So I would never follow someone completely. I would only follow that board that they have that's related to an interest of mine. So
yeah, and that's where the user experience and the business experience kind of diverge, because you're right. From your experience, it is difficult to wade through all the boards when somebody has like 36 boards. But from the business's standpoint of wanting to show up on searches or, the keyword type stuff, if they dump it all in one basket, it's not showing up on the keywords. So that's those two things are kind of at loggerheads. So and mostly in the community that I'm in, mostly what people do is we go in and we have a friend and we'll just go in and we'll click follow all. And then what you do is because a lot of people will have like a ton of boards, but they're like, half of them are like from a home improvement project that they did 2 years ago that they haven't touched since, kind of thing. And so they have the boards, but they don't really have them. You know what I mean? They're gathering dust. Then what you do is, so you click follow all, but then you watch your stream and see what they're actually using. And if content starts to come by that you're like, I am so totally not into dessert recipes while I'm on a diet, you can say, I don't want to see her dessert recipes, and just click on that board when it goes by, and then click unfollow, and it'll go away. So it's like you just selectively nuke them as they go by in the stream. And because I'm like totally not into recipes, I don't cook. Just ask my husband. And so like all my friends are into two things. They're all into scrapbooking and cooking. And so like I just hit follow all, and then if it turns out they've got 6 recipe boards, I just nuke the recipe boards as they go by. And it's just, and a lot of my friends, is like when you initially look at their profiles, they do have a bunch of recipe boards. But it turns out, but then a lot of them, it's like, well, but they don't actually use them, so I never see them. So it's like, well, I don't care. If I don't see them, I don't care that they're there. So you can look at it that way. And then lastly, your pins. You have to decide what to pin. And that is like totally up to you. And this is actually one of the best things about Pinterest is that as a social network, you can take part in Pinterest just if you are somebody who likes to consume content on the internet. You can take part in Pinterest without it being a huge time suck the way a lot of the other social networks are. And you can take part in Pinterest without having to feel like you have to have a talent or something. You know, to be on Twitter, like you feel like you have to be like witty or smart or like, you know, make people laugh or, you know, say things that make them think. All you have to do to take part on Pinterest is go, hey, that was an interesting article. Click, pin. You know, it doesn't, you're doing something you were doing anyway, which was consuming content on the internet. All you're doing is saying, okay, click, pin it, and you're done. And so you can take part in it as a social network, as a marketing exercise, without it being a huge time suck, without having to feel like, you know, I have to compete to be the funniest person in the room or, you know, whatever. And so from that standpoint, the stuff that you pin is just simply the stuff that comes across your desk anyway. Whatever it was you were, you know, reading, your recipes that you were reading anyway, your cakes that you were looking at on websites looking for inspiration for your own work. Whatever it is you were doing anyway, you just sit there with that pin it button in your browser bar and go, hey, this would be good for Pinterest. Click. Job done. It's really that simple. So
in other words, you're talking about adding things. Okay, I get you. I don't do that. I've never done that. To go outside of Pinterest to add something to my board. So basically,
and see, you're the reason for the 80% statistics that 80% of things are repins.
Yeah.
And I'll admit I'm part of it too, because probably 80% of the stuff on my board are repins too. And that's the other thing. You can pull up like once or twice a day. You can pull up your Pinterest stream and just kind of scroll and go, oh, that's really cool. Click repin. Oh, look at that. Click repin. You do that 4 or 5 times, you've curated content for the day, and you've done some marketing and you've freshened your board, and it took you all of 3 minutes, and you're done. It's fast and easy. Now, that's if you have the self-control to not go, oh, I need to read this, and oh, look at that pin. And it can be fast if you let it be fast. So, now, to close, you can't quite see that graphic that's in the corner of this pin, so I'm going to give it to you big. It reads, the crafts, the decorating, the food, the party planning. Pinterest is taking over my life, but I love it. So that's your final warning.